Hey y'all, welcome back to Sentro School. Today we'll be learning how to create ribbing on the Sentro knitting machine. Ribbing is great for adding cute designs to your projects, but it can also be a practical tool to help keep the edges of your project from curling. You can create ribbing on a panel or a tube, but if you're doing this on a panel like I am today, one thing to keep in mind is that you can't create ribbing on this first column or this last column. Ribbing is a slightly more advanced technique, but if you're a beginner, don't worry, it's not too complicated. So let's get into it. First, you're gonna need a loom pick and a crochet hook. Just about any size will do, but I like to use a 5mm hook. So here I have a panel, and let's just start with making ribbing on every other column. So like I said earlier, we can't create ribbing on this first column here, so we'll start on the second one. So just crank the handle of your machine slowly until the second pin pops its head up just enough so that you can take your loom pick and grab the stitch that's on your needle and bring it over the needle to release it from the machine. Then once you've done that, then you can start picking these stitches apart with your loom pick. So technically what we're doing now is dropping our stitches on purpose. So we can just go all the way down to our waste yarn. So I really recommend using waste yarn when doing your ribbing, especially if you've never done it before, because we'll easily be able to see our last stitch. So this is our final loop, our last stitch of our main color yarn. This is waste yarn, so this is like our project yarn, and we can very clearly see that this is the last loop in our project so far. So don't pull that stitch apart, just pinch it with your fingers, remove your loom pick, and then grab your crochet hook, and we're going to insert our crochet hook into this loop with the top of our hook pointing towards us and the handle of our hook going into the machine. So once you put your crochet hook through this final loop, then you're gonna grab this first drop stitch that's just above this loop here with your crochet hook and then bring it through the loop. And then we'll do that again. We'll grab the next drop stitch that's just above this loop and we'll bring it through the loop. And then again, bring it through the loop, grab the next one, bring it through the loop, and you'll just keep doing this until you get to the top of your project. Now you have to make sure that you're grabbing all of these drop stitches in order. You don't want to skip this one here and then move on to this one next because you're going to have a mistake in your project. So just make sure you're grabbing them all in order. And then you get the final one. And once you get up to the top, then just put this final stitch back over the needle. Then you can see our first column of ribbing is done. So we'll continue with our pattern of doing knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. So crank the handle of your machine slowly. We're gonna skip this stitch and move on to the next one. So just pop this needle up just enough so that you can grab the stitch that's on the hook already with your loom pick and release it from the machine. Just like that. And then we will pick the stitches apart. We can go part way down this time just so that y'all can see it. That looks good. So we're gonna grab this loop here. So you can do however many rows of ribbing that you would like. You don't have to go all the way down to the waste yarn. It's up to you. We're gonna grab our crochet hook and we're gonna put it through this loop and then just do that same thing. We're gonna grab the drop stitch that's above it and bring it through the loop. Grab the next stitch, bring it through the loop, and just continue all the way to the top of your project. Bring that over the loop. And your second column is done. So as we continue making our ribbing, we want to make sure that the needles are catching the yarn and pulling it under to create a new stitch. And we also want to make sure that the final stitch that we just put over this needle isn't trying to lift up and get under this hook here, we want to make sure that it's sitting flat against the machine like we normally would want as we are knitting just kind of usual stockinette stitch. Taking the stitches off the machine and then putting them back on to create the ribbing can make some of the stitches in your project want to lift up off the machine. So if you're not paying attention, that stitch might tuck or drop. So just go slow and pay attention to your needles and stitches. So we just did a knit one, purl one rib pattern because that's a super common one, but you can really do any pattern you'd like. Another common rib pattern is knit two, purl two, so how about we do that next? Let's just knit just a little ways away from this over here so we don't get them confused. We can start with this one. So we're just gonna create a row or a column of ribbing like usual, just as we've been doing. Okay, so we have our first little column of ribbing here. Now, instead of skipping this stitch, that's gonna be the next stitch that we take off our machine. So just pop the head up enough to grab the stitch with your loom pick, take it off of the needle, and then undo these stitches. And then we're just gonna do the same thing. Create another column of ribbing right next to the first one. So there we have two columns of ribbing right next to each other. So now, since we're doing a knit two, purl two pattern, we are going to skip these next two stitches. So just knit those. And we're gonna have this third one pop its head up, and we're gonna create a column of ribbing here and here. And there we go. We have our second pair of rib columns here next to each other. So I'll go ahead and get this off of the machine so that we can see the patterns better. Okay, I got this off the machine so we can look at the rib pattern now. So over here is our knit one, purl one pattern, and you can see that there's the knit stitches here, there's purl here, knit here, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. And it looks a little weird because, you know, I only went part way down on these ones here, so a little strange looking, but that pattern is probably gonna be the most common pattern that you'll see. So then over here we have our knit two, purl two pattern. So again, here in the middle is just the plain knit right here. And then we have two columns of purl, two columns of knit, two columns of purl, two columns of knit. So you see that the ribbing is just a lot wider on this one over here versus this one over here. But remember that these are just examples and you can really do, you know, any rib pattern that you want. So that's all for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, then be sure to leave a like, and if you enjoy Sentro content, then be sure to subscribe. This is just one video of many in my Sentro instructional video series, so keep an eye out for more. I hope you'll have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!